Thank you for joining us today for our webinar. We're excited to have you with us. My name's Amy Klaus, and I'm the Marketing Manager for Early Childhood Products here at Brooks Publishing. Today's webinar is on the new Story Friends Early Literacy Program. We're happy to have the program developers, Howard Goldstein and Elizabeth Kelly, here with us. Before we start, though, I want to go over some quick housekeeping tasks. So you'll be muted for today's webinar, but if you have any questions during the presentation, you can type them into the question box on your GoToWebinar panel, and we'll take these questions after the presentation during the Q&A portion. For best audio and screen quality, you may want to exit any unneeded programs. Also, we're recording this webinar, and you'll receive a link to the recording in a follow-up email tomorrow. Feel free to share that recording with any colleagues who may have missed the webinar. So now I'd like to introduce our speakers. Dr. Howard Goldstein is a nationally known scholar in the field of child language intervention research and the author of 2 books and more than 100 scholarly articles. His recent work has sought to enhance the language and literacy development of students in high-poverty schools who are at high risk for language and reading disabilities. A certified speech-language pathologist and former ASHA Vice President for Science and Research, Dr. Goldstein is currently Associate Dean of Research and Professor of Communication Sciences and Disorders in the College of Behavioral and Community Sciences at University of South Florida in Tampa. And Dr. Elizabeth Spencer Kelly is an Assistant Professor of Communication Science and Disorders in the School of Health Professions at the University of Missouri Columbia. She is a certified speech-language pathologist. Dr. Kelly's research focuses on language and early literacy skills in young children with limited oral language skills, and her recent work has sought to identify effective approaches for vocabulary intervention for preschool children. So we're very happy to have Dr. Goldstein and Dr. Kelly with us here today. So before we start, we'd like to say some acknowledgements. So the research behind the Story Friends program came from funding from the Institute of Education Sciences, from the U.S. Department of Education, and we had a lot of collaboration from teachers, parents, and children in participating schools, including the Columbus City Schools, Kansas City Schools, and the Hillsborough County School District. So the developers wanted to acknowledge all of the help they had during the development of Story Friends. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Goldstein for a presentation on an introduction to Story Friends. So thank you, Dr. Goldstein, for being here, and Dr. Kelly.
Well, thank you, everybody that's attending today. I'm Howard Goldstein. My research team and I developed Story Friends over the past decade, basically. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our journey as an introduction. You're probably aware of Hart and Risley's 1995 book, Meaningful Differences in the Everyday Experience of Young American Children. It really made us rethink what we knew about language development and early language exposure. We now know that there are huge disparities between the vocabulary exposure that children from different social classes typically experience. And by the time children raised in impoverished conditions or in preschool, there isn't enough time in the day to make up for what has been called the 30 million word gap. So we've been trying to figure out how to teach academically useful vocabulary to help address such deficiencies. Story Friends is designed to help prevent reading disabilities and to help all children succeed. Our focus primarily has been on children from high poverty communities. Well, we needed to think carefully about how to design these interventions. We needed to consider the classroom environment, the best ways to maximize teachers' time, and the ways children learn. We decided that stories were the appropriate vehicle to embed instruction on vocabulary and comprehension. Well, preschool classrooms are exciting and active places. There's a lot going on, and we were thinking about Story Friends. We thought, okay, this is something we need to develop for preschoolers because it's really hard for teachers to devote sufficient class time to teaching vocabulary. It's true that teachers typically read stories to children, but when you begin to think about how to select vocabulary words and appropriate questions about the stories, the process becomes rather difficult. Teachers have to come up with child-friendly definitions, multiple contexts for teaching the words, and ways to help children answer inferential questions. Then how do you make sure that each child has ample opportunities to respond or practice these skills? We can't expect teachers to do all these things, not unless they plan it all out beforehand. So basically, we've taken over the burden of doing just that. Preschool teachers are responsible for the comprehensive high-quality instruction that takes place in the first tier of a multi-tiered model, or MTSS model, multi-tiered system of supports. And when we add additional tiers of instruction, we want to maximize teachers' time by creating interventions that can be implemented with high fidelity in real-life settings. We don't need to ask teachers to divert time and energy away from the high-quality Tier 1 instruction that they're doing or their general curriculum. Effective interventions need to consider the ways that young children learn. Active engagement with academic content is going to promote learning. Young children typically like to listen to stories multiple times, and the repetition of stories and embedded lessons within the stories will help children learn new vocabulary. The more vocabulary words are used in multiple contexts and activities, the better for learning. It's particularly important that we offer multiple opportunities to respond. This is the best predictor of learning that I know of, but if you want to think about giving children turns answering questions while reading a book, that strategy really limits the opportunities to respond available to each child. So we had to consider a lot to consider as we developed the Story Friends curriculum. We designed, refined, and evaluated the intervention over a number of years, and we're excited to share our innovative approach with you today. I'm going to turn it over to Beth Kelly to describe Story Friends and how it is implemented. Beth? Great.
Okay, in this next section, we're really going to talk about logistics. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what this program looks like, what we teach, how we teach it. So the Story Friends program includes these specially designed storybooks. They feature our friendly animal characters. You've already seen a few of them on the previous slide. So we have the Jungle Friends and the Forest Friends. And the storybooks are presented along with our accompanying pre-recorded audio. So children are listening to the stories under headphones, and they follow along in their storybooks. You'll have a chance to listen to a little of one of the books in a few minutes. Each of the books lasts between 10 and 12 minutes, and we designed them so that they could fit into a typical center or small group rotation that happens in a lot of preschool classrooms. Embedded into each of the storybooks and the audio are brief, engaging lessons that target some of those important language skills that Howard mentioned, so vocabulary and comprehension. In each book, children participate in lessons for basic concept words, challenging vocabulary words, and comprehension questions about the story. And within each lesson, children have those multiple opportunities for active academic responses. So things like saying a word, saying a definition, answering a question about the story. There are also places in the lessons for children to lift a little flap in the storybook and see a photo or an example or an activity that goes along with the word that we're teaching. There's also some places for gestures. So we've embedded these lessons, and each of these interactions has been designed to help kids learn these vocabulary and comprehension skills. On the next couple of slides, we'll show you some examples of the instructional targets. So each storybook includes lessons for 1 or 2 basic concept words. So these are basic concept words like tall and short, between, around, high and low. These basic concept words are, a common and important part of instruction in early childhood. We also teach challenging vocabulary words, so each storybook includes lessons for words like protect, enormous, thrilled, disappointed, and on this slide, surprised. These challenging vocabulary words are verbs and adjectives, and these are words that are likely to be unfamiliar to a lot of preschool children. We know that these types of challenging vocabulary words are important for children as they grow to become sophisticated and proficient language users. We also know that these challenging vocabulary words are really critical for later reading comprehension and academic achievement. So it makes sense for us to start teaching these words in early childhood. The other thing that we target in Story Friends is we provide some opportunities to practice answering questions about the story. So specifically, Story Friends targets inferential questions. We know from our research and others' research that many preschool children are able to answer simple recall or literal questions like who was in this story, but they struggle to answer these more difficult inferential questions. So these are a lot of why questions. Why did the Jungle Friends laugh at Ellie? Why did Leo help his friends? So all of the instruction is automated. It's presented with this pre-recorded text. On the next slide here, we'll switch over to Amy, and she's going to share a brief example where you can hear the narrator introduce the story. She'll give you a little sample of a comprehension question, and then also some sample of one of the challenging vocabulary words.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Kelly. So now you're seeing a video on my screen, and I'm going to play the first couple minutes. So this is instruction from one of the books that's titled Ellie's First Day.
Hello again. Welcome to the Listening Center. It's me, Wanda the Word Wolf. Remember, when you hear me say, "Oh, oh," it means it is time for you to answer some questions. Do you have your book? Make sure it is closed and do not open it until I tell you to. Look at the front cover of your book. Do you see a picture of Ellie Elephant on the cover? Yes. Now put your finger under the first word of the title. Follow the arrow under the words as we read the title of the book together. It says, Ellie's First Day. Go ahead and open your book now. Turn the page. The first day of school was a big day for Ellie. Her mom packed a lunch full of peanuts and jelly. Turn the page. Ellie grabbed her bags and ran straight outside. How exciting! Her very first school bus ride. Oh, oh! Ellie Elephant is excited. Why is Ellie excited? Ellie is excited because it is her first day of school. She gets to ride the school bus and meet her new teacher. That sounds fun. Turn the page. Ellie was enormous, so she had to squeeze in tight. When she got on the bus, it tilted to the right. Oh, oh! Ellie is enormous. She is really big. Enormous. Say enormous. Enormous means really big. What word means really big?
Enormous.
Enormous. Great job. Let's see. Can you tell me some things that are enormous? I'm thinking of a school bus, a mountain, or a building. Those are things that are really big. Now, pretend you are going to give Ellie a hug. Remember, she is enormous, so make your arms really big. Phew. Tell me, what does enormous mean? Really big. That's right.
So that was just a sample of the beginning instruction for one of the books. So now, Dr. Goldstein, I'm going to hand the controls back to you so you can share your tablet.
There's a couple of things to point out about what you just heard. So at the very beginning, you hear Wanda the word wolf, who is our narrator, and there's that auditory cue there when she does the howling that there's a lesson coming up. There's also a picture of Wanda on each of the pages where there's a lesson, and you can hear those pauses in the instruction for kids to respond. And for all of you who have worked with young children, you realize that they're very quick to respond to those kinds of opportunities. And we find that they really enjoy interacting with Wanda in those lessons. So now we've talked just a little bit about what Story Friends teaches. I want to talk about how Story Friends can be implemented in the classroom. I mentioned that Story Friends has been designed to fit into those preschool classroom settings, and so we've designed it so it can be a small group activity, and each listening center, as I mentioned, lasts about 10 or 15 minutes, designed to fit into a typical center or small group rotation. In this picture, you see that there are 3 children and an adult participating, and the children are listening to the story under the headphones and following along in their storybooks. I want to take a minute to talk about the role of that adult. As Howard mentioned, one of our goals in designing Story Friends was to create a program that could be implemented with high fidelity in preschool classrooms without placing a lot of excessive demands on the teacher. So in Story Friends, because the lessons are delivered through the pre-recorded audio, the adult at the listening center is really just there to facilitate. She can help the kids follow along, stay on task, maybe give them some encouragement to respond, some praise for responding. The important piece here is that the adult doesn't need to provide any instruction. So this means that this adult doesn't need a lot of extra training. So a teacher's aide, a paraprofessional, a student teacher, a parent volunteer, any of those adults could easily be the facilitator at the listening center without leading a lot of expert preparation. And so that leaves that classroom teacher free and available to work with other children on other activities. On the next slide, we have this illustration here to show that in the Story Friends program, children listen to the story multiple times, typically 3 times in a week. And the purpose of these repeated listenings is to provide multiple learning opportunities. So each time the children hear the book, they have those multiple opportunities to respond. And then as they listen to the books over consecutive days, they have an opportunity to practice those responses and practice some of that new learning. One of the important questions when thinking about using Story Friends is which children are good candidates for Story Friends? And our suggestion is that you draw on multiple sources of information to help you choose those children who are the best candidates for Story Friends. So you might already have some information about the children that you work with from screening tools or other language measures. Here we're showing we've developed a decision-making framework that can help you make decisions about the children. So when you complete this questionnaire, there are items that relate to language skills, so expressive language and vocabulary skills, comprehension skills, and this allows teachers to think about who are the children that are lagging behind in their language skills. Another source of information to consider here are these child characteristics. So these items relate to child behavioral characteristics that might help you think about which kids will be most likely to learn in that listening center arrangement. In our experience, most preschool children would benefit from learning these challenging vocabulary words that we've taught in Story Friends. Children rarely know these words before we teach them. However, we designed and tested this program specifically with children who are living in low-income neighborhoods, and these are mainly children who are below average in their language development. So our evidence base for this program comes from kids who are lagging behind. So this program is, designed to work for most preschool children. One thing that is important to consider is that if you're working with children who don't have very basic language skills, they may not be able to benefit from Story Friends because they won't understand the stories and the definitions and the examples. So those might be children who wouldn't be appropriate for Story Friends. In some of our development work, our research studies, we use the picture naming IGD, which has 15 items to label. And so children who could only label 1 or 2 of those 15 pictures really didn't have that basic language that they needed to be able to benefit from the program. So of course another important question is, how are we going to measure children's learning? How will we tell if they're benefiting from the program? So the Story Friends program includes measures for the challenging vocabulary words and the concept words. For the challenging vocabulary words, the assessments are designed to be given at the end of each of the Story Friends units, which ends up being about once a month. And as we went through our research process, we tried out lots of different types of measures of vocabulary, and what we settled on was this definitional task. So asking the children an open-ended definitional question, what does enormous mean? And then also asking, if they couldn't provide the open-ended response, giving them the choice of 2 definitions. So the definitional task really gives an indication of a robust vocabulary knowledge. If children can give a definition or identify a definition, this is a strong indication that they know quite a bit about what this word means. We also have a measure for the concept words, and the concept word measure is designed to be given after each series of books, which is about every 3 months. And here children are asked to respond with the concept word that we're targeting, and we use some pictures to help support that task. So the last thing I want to sort of end this section by emphasizing that the Story Friends program has been designed to be easily implemented in classroom settings. And over the years, as we've developed this, we've worked with children and teachers in a variety of preschool settings and found that the listening centers fit into classroom routines and that children really enjoy participating. And we also have some strong evidence that kids benefit from this program and learn quite a bit. So Howard's going to tell you now a little bit about the research and development process that resulted in Story Friends.
Well, thank you, Beth. That was great. We've evaluated the effects of Story Friends in public pre-K classrooms, Head Start classrooms, and child care centers in 3 or 4 states. We find that on average children learn over half the vocabulary words, and these are the challenging words like imagine, comfort, reckless, wise. This bar graph shows that children don't know many of these words. Even if they're exposed to the words in the stories, they don't tend to learn how to define them. However, when we embed our lessons within those stories, as reflected in these unit tests, you'll see that the Story Friend participants are learning quite a few of these words. Being able to define the words is a strong indication of depth of knowledge, but we suspect that there are even benefits from the lessons where children are developing partial knowledge. Children are going to encounter these words as they begin to read. And as the children learn to read, they learn how to decode words. But if they sound out words that they do not know, it's going to hinder their reading fluency and hamper their reading comprehension. But we're very encouraged with results similar to these. This slide depicts the iterative process that we believe truly exemplifies the development of an evidence-based practice. First, we developed books, the lessons, the assessments. We tried them out and studied the effects of within some small-scale studies. We also talk with teachers and carefully analyze children's learning to figure out what kinds of revisions and refinements were needed. So you see that we kind of loop back around to further develop our books, the lessons, and so forth, because we needed to make revisions, sometimes in our word selection, sometimes in the lessons, the embedded lessons, and occasionally even our stories. And when we felt we had consistently good results in our smaller studies, then we had teachers try out Story Friends in these larger scale studies. Eventually, they've used Story Friends across the school year, and our results have been very encouraging. We really need to acknowledge, again, our teachers, administrators, the students who really helped us in the development, in this iterative development of Story Friends. And ultimately, we believe that children who have experienced Story Friends will realize that they can learn new words and answer questions that require them to make inferences about what they've heard. These are important skills that will better prepare children for success in school. Amy, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Great, thank you for that great introduction to Story Friends. We wanted to share a little bit about how the Story Friends products are packaged. So there's first a classroom kit. So the classroom kit includes everything that you need to implement Story Friends in a classroom with a group of 3 children, so the small group. There's a teacher's guide that has lots of information about how to set up your listening center and how to use all the pre-test and the post-test assessments. The USB with all of the audio tracks for all of the 26 books, and some of the assessment forms are also on that USB drive. There's a set of picture cards that comes in your classroom kit box. The picture cards are used during the assessments. They're pictures of things and you're asking the kids to identify or some of the words, the pictures in the cards. And then you also get 3 storybook sets. So there's 26 books and you're getting 3 copies of each one, so 78 total books. So the classroom kit has everything you need for a preschool classroom or a Head Start classroom or childcare to implement it. We also packaged a specialist kit just in case someone would want just 1 copy of the storybook set. So you get the teacher's guide and the USB and the picture cards, and then you just get 1 set of storybooks. And then the teacher's guide's available alone, and then there's extra storybook sets if you would want to buy another set to do it with more kids. So those are the products, and then on the next slide we have some pictures of the products. So you'll see the teacher's guide and the USB and the storybook set, and both the kits come in boxes for you to put all your materials in. And so as a special offer for joining today, we're giving a 20% discount on any Story Friends products. So if you're interested, the savings code is up on your screen. You can use that when you order on our website or call our customer service. And this discount's good till the end of June. So our website is brookspublishing.com/storyfriends, and there's a whole bunch of more information about, you can watch that video that we showed in its entirety, and then you also can download the screening questionnaire and then some of the sample assessments. There's a nice download on all of the research behind Story Friends, and we have a complete sampler. So you can fill out a quick form and you can get a 24-page sampler that shows you some more of the illustrations and shows you some more implementation information in that. So now we're going to take any questions that people may have. So if you have any questions, you can submit them in your question box on your GoToWebinar panel, and I'll read them off for Dr. Goldstein and Dr. Kelly. So I think we'll start. We have a couple questions that have come in. So one of our listeners asked, would it be appropriate to use Story Friends with all of the children in my class?
The development of Story Friends was really kind of focused on children who would benefit for a second tier of instruction. But what we have found is that, especially in our low-income neighborhoods and preschool and child care settings, the children typically don't know these words. So in essence, while the focus may be on ensuring that the children who are falling behind in language development are getting to listen to Story Friends at least 3 times a week, other kids are going to benefit as well. You know, so many of our teachers have actually used Story Friends as a center, and all of the children actually rotated through this center. So we don't really have any reason to say you shouldn't use it. If you have children who know a lot of these words at pre-test, they're probably not going to benefit very much. But that probably isn't going to occur all that frequently. Do you have anything to add, Beth?
No, I think that's it. I think we did mention earlier that you have someone who's just at the very basic language level. This might be a little tricky for them. I will say that we've had some teachers who have had everybody in the classroom rotate through those centers, and the children who have limited language still really enjoy the stories and participating, and they might be learning those basic concept words, but not quite ready to acquire some of those challenging vocabulary words.
Great, thanks. Let's see, we have another question here. So will this program fit with the regular classroom curriculum that we're using?
You want to take this one, Beth?
Sure. So when we started designing Story Friends, we really wanted to create a program that could be a supplemental program for any early childhood curriculum. And so we did spend some time reviewing and evaluating, I think, 9 or 10 of the most frequently used preschool curriculum so that we could line up some of our goals with that. We also have been sure to try to test this out, as both Howard and Amy mentioned, in a variety of settings. So Story Friends has been implemented in early childhood special ed settings, in public pre-Ks, in Head Starts, in private pay daycares. And what we've found is that it really can supplement any general classroom curriculum that's taking place. Again, these challenging vocabulary words don't show up a lot. And so this is an important way to add these, these words that we know are really critical for kids.
Great, thanks. Do you have, Dr. Goldstein, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, it's interesting when you actually look at a variety of curricula. They really vary dramatically in the number and kinds of vocabulary that they tend to introduce and focus on. Many of them are organized thematically, and one of the things that we realize is that there are a lot of rather rare words that we would consider tier 3 words that end up being incorporated. There are often words that are really pretty basic words. Our focus has really been on words that Beck, McCown, and Kuchin refer to as tier 2 words. And these are words that are likely to occur in literature. As children learn how to read, they're going to encounter these words. They're not very basic words. We don't focus on those because children are going to tend to learn them because of their high frequency of use in classroom settings and home settings. But they're words that have utility versus words that are really more specialized, that are only seen in very limited contexts. So it doesn't really matter what the curriculum is because these stories kind of, are attractive and interesting to students regardless of what the theme of the week may be or what the general curriculum is. So we basically think that this is something that will supplement just about any curriculum, and we very much endorse having curricula that have a well-organized scope and sequence in a variety of different skill areas.
Great, thanks. It looks like we have one more question to cover, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to type them in the last minute here. So the last question that's been submitted, so is there any special equipment that you need to use the program?
In administering this within a small group, we've always done it where children are wearing headphones, child-friendly headphones, and we typically have used MP3 players. In some cases, we burnt CDs. It kind of depends on what classrooms have available to them. You could also use your computers and output it through like a splitter to a set of 3 headphones or a 4th set of headphones, so that the teacher is also listening and is able to follow along and make sure the children are on the right page, and encouraging them to respond and so forth. So there is some audio equipment that we recommend that people use to administer this, especially within small group situations. But there are lots of possibilities there. So that's why the audio equipment isn't really bundled with this product as it is, because most classrooms already have this kind of equipment.
Great.
I think that's it.
Great. Yeah, I wanted to let people know that the files that are on this USB drive, you'd be able to copy them to, say, an iPad, or you could copy them, burn them on a CD, as Howard mentioned, or you can plug it into your computer. So those files will work multiple ways. And I'll say that we, here at Brooks, for some of our conferences we're going to, we purchased little kid headphones and then the audio splitter pretty inexpensively on Amazon. But many classrooms probably have headphones already. It looks like, oh, I thought I had a question, but I think it was just a hand. All right, so it looks like we don't have any more questions coming in. So I really appreciate everyone joining us. So tomorrow you'll receive a follow-up email that'll have a recording link to it, and I'll also put our URL to the Story Friends section on our website. It's brookspublishing.com/storyfriends, and that'll have all the samples you can download, and you can take a look at that full video if you want to find out how Ellie's first day finishes up. We really appreciate you joining us today and hearing all about Story Friends. I should also mention that Story Friends is going to publish in August. So this is a brand new product. So it's going to be available for next school year. But you'll be able to look at samples on the website, and if you're coming to any conferences where Brooks will be, we'll be at the NAYC Professional Development Institute in a couple weeks, and we'll have some Story Friends samples there if you'll be in attendance. But it will be out in August. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you, Dr. Goldstein and Dr. Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.